All right, welcome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of Game Changers, where we bring together the industry's top visionaries, innovators, and leading brands in the gaming and Web3 space. I'm your host, Bear, and alongside me, as always, is.
Hey everybody, it's Board. I was furiously buying video games and board games on Amazon for Prime Day, but I needed to take a break because I wanted to talk to all you guys and stop spending the money. I'm like
Oh,
$1,000 deep.
boy.
This is not good.
Oh, God. Did we really need Amazon? I thought it feels like every day is Amazon Prime Day. Like, there's always just boxes showing up at my house. Do we need a day to do more of that?
We need it to feel like Christmas every day, so I think that's it.
Oh gosh. Well, what are we gonna do on Christmas? Okay. Well, listen. We have a great show today. We have some people. We have a group of people that I think. I don't know. One of the first uh, groups of games of people that was started to sort of play on the blockchain and show us what's possible. And I got to say, it's been so freaking cool to see a project that starts off one way and just keeps building and building and building. There's so many projects and people out there that sort of swing once, and whether it works or not, they kind of just that's all they got in them. And today we have the team from Wolf Game, which is just so freaking cool. I think I know they inspired a ton of people to come out and try their own thing. They inspired us over at Forgotten Runes to do a bunch of stuff. And I wanted to get them up. I think they're all on stage, but let's get you guys up here. Why don't you introduce yourselves one by one, and do a little flexing for us, please.
Yeah, I could start. Hi everyone, I'm Zombie. I've been with Wolf Game for 19 months. I think that's when we minted back in November of 2021. And as you said, yeah, a lot has changed from those very early days. I think it's funny that we opened out talking about board games. Wolf Game, in many ways, is, I think, a first of its kind blockchain board game. And the new games that we launched at the end of June, I think showcase that even further, and we'll get into that. But today, I assist with business development, partnerships, community management stuff, similar to Term, really, and also to Bry, who I'll let introduce themselves.
Amazing. Thank you for coming on. Bride, term, come on
What's
up.
up, legends?
Let's
GMGM, great to be
go.
here. LFG, GMGM. I've been following, Runes for forever, since you guys launched. Big props to everything you've built. Interestingly, I'm a day zero minter of Wolf Game. I was early in the space, 2020, entered through Top Shot and Art Blocks and Zed Run. I think like so many here. And in parallel, I built a marketing agency based out of New York, worked in the UA space, content space for the past decade, and made the move professionally into Web3. I joined a company called Infinigods. We're building, mobile games, tower defense games, all sorts of games with Web3 integrations. But in parallel, Wolf Game's been my home base since day one. I've been an advisor for the team, for the founders, have gotten to know Zombie very, very well. And I think, like you said, it's been a really fun project and home base to be a part of, just looking at the pivots, considering where it started on day one and how it's now evolved into this, mass multiplayer PvP arena board game of sorts, has been fun to follow. So excited to be here and excited to talk more about it today.
Oh, so happy to have you. I'm really looking forward to having you guys sort of talk us through this evolution here, because you really you've done so much. I mean, for the longest time, I thought after the was it spring of 22, I thought y'all just like that was it, and then like months later, you guys would come out swinging. So God, I just love it. We're gonna have to get into it. And then do we have anyone else from the team?
Yep, I'm here. What's up, Wolves and Wizards and everybody else in the audience? Thanks for having us. I'm not a team member. I'm just someone who's addicted. I'm the community addict of Wolf Game. Have been since day one. So I'm a day one mentor, and just been seriously in love with the community. I think Wolf Game attracted a really different crowd of Web3 personalities because from its initial white paper, you could just tell it was something different. Like it was, amid the sea of cookie cutter projects where it was just, we're gonna mint and then we're gonna release a token and then we're gonna release breeding and then long term we're gonna make a game. Instead, Wolf Game came out with this white paper that just blew people's minds with the stealing mechanics and the fact that it's launching day one with a playable game. That really hooked me immediately, and all sorts of other people that were looking for something different. So it's got some really big brain people. It's got all sorts of characters. So I just love them all. And I started off in the Discord just answering questions because it's complex. So there's a lot of confusion. Even I was very confused day one. So I started answering questions constantly, and then I spun up this guide called the Farmer's Almanac just to help, mostly just to save time on my part because I was tired of answering the same questions over and over. I just linked people to the guide, and then that started my journey of content creation for the game and just becoming a helper. And eventually, I became a mod in the Discord chat. So that's where you'll find me spending all of my time in my day procrastinating work and chatting and doing all that. So yeah, let's talk Wolf Game more.
I like this guy.
Yeah, no, this is Jitsi. This Jitsi reminds me of you in Wizards. No, I think this is that's so cool about Web3 is you can be a fan of something and very quickly get involved in a more sort of serious manner. Like your participation is only capped by what you're interested in doing, and yeah, I mean, Terminus. It's like like Jitsi. Jitsi was Jitsi. You were there on mint day for us, right? For Wizards.
I think I was like 5 days out actually. I don't think I was on midday, which is like
Oh, well, then
wish
get
I
out of
was,
here.
but I
Just
know, right?
go on mute then. If you could go on mute, that's great. Thanks. Just kidding. No, but it was this idea of like half the people on our team now came from the community, and so just love to see it and the passion. And I remember when that white paper dropped. Dota, one of my partners, he was like, "You guys should check this out. This is going to be really cool." Totally. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I cut up. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think if you were here during that 21 bull run, which was fucking madness. I mean, if you were trading and flipping and collecting during that period, I mean, it was so unique and so special. But I think, when you look at that year, save for maybe Bored Ape Yacht Club, Wolf Game had the most wild ascent I've ever seen. It minted out. Sheep were selling for like 0.03 ETH on secondary. And then within 48 hours, I think when JIT got in, sheep were selling for 10 ETH to Post Malone and Marshmello and Gary Vee and all these celebrities. I mean, literally, you had a 1000x, in 2 days. And I remember there was like a period of time where I was like calculating how many days to retirement because my sheep were literally printing like 1,000 plus bucks a day in wool that you could then sell on on Uniswap for I think 10 cents a token at the time. And it just was like, it was a surreal time. And I don't know if we'll ever experience anything like that again. I hope we do. I hope a bull comes back. I hope we see more insanity. But, I think to go from that, mania, I think is the right word for it, to transition then into, steady, slow development, was an interesting process. But I think that's why you've seen, so many core members stick around is, they believed in the vision, they believed in the product. And I think it became more than just, speculating on a token or hoping for yield.
Yeah, I'll jump in here too. So, as many of you know, Wolf Game is led by this mysterious character called the Shepherd. That's what Brian and I call him. That's what Term calls him. We don't refer to the Shepherd by their name. In fact, we don't know who the Shepherd actually is. But their vision has remained intact from day one. And that to me has been the thing that I think has kept me holding on as well and kept me so invested in being a part of this team and this community is that the vision has been there from the beginning. And the team is so cool, calm, and collected through all of this, through the mania, through the quiet periods, through the bear market. and they just consistently deliver. And it's been a real treat to be a part of that aspect of Wolfgame.
Hey guys, I wanted to chime in. I'm such a board game nerd. We talked a little bit about that. Can you guys talk about your game history and as you guys were early into this and thinking about like the overall vision, what did you think it was going to be in 2021, and how close have you stayed on that path, at a high level now in 2023?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that we're pretty close to where we were always going to be. I think that there have been some changes as regulatory risk has entered the scene, questions on how to safely distribute tokens safely in that like not attracting the attention of the Fed and the SEC. Like how do you do this in a way that is on the up and up while remaining an anonymous team, largely an anonymous team? Those things have posed challenges to the development and may have shifted course a little bit insofar as we're no longer a staking game. There's no longer any free lunch in Wolfgame. You really have to play to earn the token, and the token is largely distributed from other players, not from the team in any respect. In the early days, when there was an exploit and we had to pause the contract, we had this thing called risky game where people essentially rolled the dice to have a 50-50 shot at a really large wool pouch or nothing at all. I don't think we'll have games like that going forward in the future because of those different risks that have sort of cropped up over the last 19 months or so. But this notion of like a large board game type environment, that's really always been there. When we had the exploit and the contract was paused, the team introduced farmers and land, and it wasn't a cash grab. It was absolutely an indication of what was to come. This idea that we'd have plots of land that we might develop in some way, that we'd have farmers that would serve as multipliers. They've always been positioned in that way, and that goes back more than a year now. Getting there, of course, was a journey.
Yeah, I want to hop in too to answer this question a little bit with regards to like the vision of the game. I think something that people holders have kind of been reconciling with is their vision of the game versus the team's vision. And so basically for almost 2 years, we got, speculative tweets, mysterious tweets from the Shepherd and the team, basically maybe 4 times a week for over a year, which is insane if you think about it compared to many other projects that you may be tracking. And they were really, really entertaining. They were mysterious. They were cryptic. They had amazing GIFs with the pixel art, the signature style Wolfgame. But a lot of times, we had to basically surmise what they were trying to tell us. And so there was all sorts of different competing visions for what the full game was going to really be when it arrived. From World of Wolfgame, World of Warcraft style MMO visions to, Clash of Clans and Farmville and Stardew Valley. And what we got may have been very different from what people were expecting. So a lot of people are kind of, adjusting to that reality. And as everybody knows, like the expectations in the space are just always massive. So a lot of people may have been expecting, AAA quality, something like the quality of like Yuga style games, which is not really what we got. I think it's pretty clear that the Wolfgame team is agile, it's slim, and they really are delivering products within their means, which I think is a good sign for the longevity and the sustainability of the team and the products that we're trying to deliver.
I'm really curious also to hear your guys' perspective on the navigation of games and commerce. Like, you have people who are really interested in the commerce piece, especially probably in 2021, a little bit of 22, and then gaming, people who come in just for the play or primarily for the play, and then you have people who are there for both. And I have found, at least in my Web3 experience, and just coming from the gaming side, sometimes they don't all play well together, or sometimes they have grossly different expectations. And did you guys feel like your community of players kind of transitioned or transformed? What's that ratio of like games versus commerce now? And how did you guys handle kind of the expectations, as you said?
I definitely think that there have been some growing pains in that regard, some mindset shifts that really I think needed to occur. Um, Brian mentioned Infinigods at the top, and that's also a company that I've been working with. I'm leading business development for Infinigods with that team, and our core focus there has been on delivering product first and delivering free to play product that players can monetize through the Web3 layer should they choose, but it's not essential to their experience. And I think that we're seeing that shift in Wolf Game as well. The peak doesn't require ownership of an NFT to play on the peak. You do need some wool and you need peak credits, but you can get those from other players. They're thinking newly about that on ramp and how to bring people in and what really the focus of play is. It still is very much Wolf Game is still very much a competition to win wool. The new games are all or nothing bouts to win a wool prize pool. Um, but the notion that the game should be fun first, I think, has always been essential to the team as they've developed these three games. And that's certainly something that I think we've seen in the broader space, that the products really need to be good and enjoyable, and the rest will follow, right? If players want to monetize, that channel should be there. Ownership is meaningful. Ownership's really the cornerstone of Web3. But it doesn't have to be in your face necessarily. And as long as you're delivering a solid product, again, the rest will follow.
I totally agree. And I think, we're seeing it more broadly with any gaming project in the space. There is this natural transition from speculation, holding an NFT, holding a token and hoping it goes up, to actually needing to play a game or an experience to profit if you're financially motivated. And I think with Wolf Game, there's this really interesting dissonance, because if you look at the early iterations, it was all about that. How much wool token can I stack? How many sheep and wolves can I buy and hold? And let me just hold these assets and pray they go up, and then flip them at a later time. I think whether it was the progression of the project or the market, I think both are probably responsible to a degree. The team in the game has very much pivoted towards, you need to play the game, if you want to profit and you want to prosper. And I think they've done it in very clever ways. It's moved away from just purely gambling, or RNG, which I think has been a massive target of the SEC. So I give the team a lot of credit for being really prudent and responsible in that respect. If you look at Peak Games, the new PvP board game arena, it's all zero sum games of skill. So they're mostly highly strategic card games or board games. They're heavily influenced by game theory. And, when you play a game, I'm putting up 500 wool. Za is putting up 500 wool. The winner of that game takes that whole pot, and the loser goes away with nothing. So there's not, this token being created out of thin air. It's purely transitioning from one player to another. And I think, to your point earlier, Board, about, going crazy with Prime Day, I think you're seeing a paradigm and a platform and really a protocol that's shifting towards, something that I would, compare to like Mario Party. You have this always on metagame for positioning, for advantages, on the farm. But I think where 99% of people will play, is these mini games. There's going to be this rotational set of games, some of which early on will be developed by Wolf Game, by the team. But I think in a future state, you'll see third-party developers, create games and experiences that they can plug into that platform. And I think there's a world where, in a year, 2 years, Peak has 20, 30, if not 50 games that are active and rotating, potentially even collaborative. Somebody like Forgotten Runes or Yuga, or, if Etherworks wanted to resurface, could potentially create a game that may or may not slot into that framework. And I think that's a really interesting, paradigm that's being built now.
Yeah, I love the analogy to Super Mario Party. I think of games like Jackbox TV, other couch co-op games that generally people have played with each other at home, but do that online, do it with thousands of people like that. That seems like a really fun format. And I think the PvP that you guys are discussing makes so much sense. A lot of people get nervous about this idea of discussing wagering in gaming, but there's a really clear distinction, right, between something like poker and blackjack. One is you versus everybody else at the table, which is poker. We've got the World Series of poker going on right now in Vegas. And then blackjack, you're playing against the house. And if you're playing against the house, or you are the house, that's where, regulations are tricky, and it's harder to run a business. But I think that when you were talking about games of skill, that's a huge opportunity for Web3, for just seamless transactions and just making it really easy for people to compete against each other. That's what I'm excited about. That's what I want to see Web3 gaming move towards. And I think just people being comfortable about talking about that. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years as a species, right? Like, we've been betting against each other. What we don't like to do is play against the house, right, where like there's a very set percentage. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the games that you guys are building, you talked about some of the sort of party style games that you've already released. I'm really curious to hear from the team. Anything that just hit the cutting room floor. Like, game design to me is always so fun. You're always thinking of ideas. Any recent ones that you guys kind of just thought about in terms of like game styles, game mechanics, but then a few minutes into or a few hours into planning, you're like, no, this isn't going to work. Or is there something that you're really excited about in terms of like a game mechanic or a game genre that you've been thinking about, but maybe aren't ready to release yet?
This is a great question. It's also a tricky one for any of us on stage to answer because we're not privy to development conversations. What I will say is that the games that we have today did go through an iterative design process, as you'd expect any game to go through. And what we arrived on, I think, are three fairly compelling games. Wolfwitz in particular is my personal favorite, and that's the game that we'll be playing today at 1 Eastern, so in about an hour. And we've seen various forms of those. At least I know Brian and I have seen some early, I guess I would call them like alpha screenshots of those games as they've been put together. But I can't speak to anything that's happened behind the scenes wherein the dev path may have been altered or any games that have been left on the cutting room floor. What I will say is that there are more games planned, and growth is a key focus for the team. Not just growth of the player base, but growth of the product. To Bry's point about Wolf Game and the Peak being a protocol for more games, that is the intention from the team. That's something that has been in mind from the very beginnings of the Peak. And the Peak is a concept that I heard about more than a year ago now. At the earliest days that we were talking about what our full game experience might be, the notion that the Peak would be a place for players to come and compete has always been there. And so I expect that we'll level up that game experience over time. One thing I'll add, though, we've seen a lot of really cool community games come up around the Peak. Not only have people been adapting the games that we're already playing to other platforms so that they can play them there, I've seen like reskins of existing games to add like Wolfwitz on top. But we also have community members that have created like wool poker tables and have been playing that fairly regularly over the last 19 or so months. And I just think that's really, really creative and cool. And it's something interesting about the Web3 space that people can take ownership and take control of their own experiences and develop around that, which is really interesting. Just an aside.
I also real quick gotta mention, shout out the Woolcino, which is a really, really cool integration of the community builders in this team. In the community are really, really astounding. And shout out to Valakenta. He's created this Wolf Game Power Tools extension that can really enhance the playing experience of Wolf Game. But not only that, he teamed together with another big community member named Jay Steezy to create this thing called the Woolcino, where once you downloaded the extension, you actually navigated into the game, and it overlaid a casino that you would enter and you would play, and you play these slot machine, like all integrated within the game itself. It was like literally a Wolf Game mod. which was really, really cool to see. I mean, Wolf Game is trying to position itself as a platform, and the community members are already taking advantage of that.
Yeah, it's smart. I mean, you see so many large game developers doing this. Fortnite Creative is one of the recent stories, but of course, Roblox, Minecraft, basically create the sandbox, allow people to build in it, but also you need to be active within that sandbox and building examples of like these are the fun games, these are what you can do with this platform. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I think just to add one more point to your question, Board, I think you can look to the history of Wolfgame for some clues on how they've pivoted. If you look to, last early summer, they released something called Cave Game, which was, a smash hit for anybody who played. But effectively, it was a competitive dungeon crawler that ran for almost 2 months. And effectively, you would take your sheep and your wolves, your NFTs, you would dive through these caves, you would spelunk, and you could find wool, you could find power ups. But really, what people were searching for were these gems. And effectively, these gems were, an ERC 1155 that you could apply to farmers, and it gamified their rarity reveal. That went on for 2 months, and I think it was the first time in this space that I had seen, a gamified, rarity reveal to that extent. And those gems were selling for, thousands of dollars at one time. So it was quite a lucrative spelunking extravaganza. And then you saw Dookie Dash do it with, sewer passes and something similar. But, that was a much longer, more progressive, more in-depth game mode. I think if you fast forward to today, if you look at Peak, it's much more in line with what you said, Board. It's geared towards that party style game. It's geared towards being snappy. It's geared towards being easy to onboard. Right now you need wool and you need Peak credits to play. But I think there is a future where you just connect with an email address, or social login. You have a provisioned wallet, and you can just buy all of that stuff directly in game. And the other cool part is, unlike gambling mechanics where the house, is always winning, they're taking a vig. The players, the holders of assets, are the house. If you're buying wool or these peak credits or animals, they're all coming from the player base. Wolf Game, the devs don't take any of that, which I think is a really interesting model that is very unique to Web3. So it's when you think about the now and the then, I think it is very, very exciting.
Not only does the team not take a percentage of that, the percentage that the team would take is actually burned. So it's an interesting piece of the tokenomics that the team encourages the token to be destroyed in those transactions.
No, I mean with that plus the shepherd being this mysterious character, you have a very Bitcoiny sort of ecosystem here, which is good, right? I like that. I like that. It feels like it's a fair plane of play. I did want to ask, as somebody who is relatively new to learning about your ecosystem, how do you guys bring people in? How do you guys onboard individuals? Like, I'm the guy who will invite 6 people over to play a board game, and then I take out the instruction book, and it's going to like take an hour to go through it and teach everybody how to play, and everybody groans, but I'll do it. I'll be that guy, but it's not fun. It's not easy. So you have a lot going on. How do you kind of welcome that new person who joins in and maybe feels a little bit overwhelmed? Where do they start?
Well, also, I just want to say, poke in real fast, Board. I've never been invited over on board game night, so kind of insulted. You may need to bring me over.
I didn't want to subject you to it. It's what I do to my enemies.
Okay. I feel better. Sorry. Go on.
Oh man, we are those guys right now. That is the on ramp. There's some getting started content on Wolf.game and even in the Discord, but a lot of it is frankly a little bit dated. Um, the game is complex. The peak, I think, simplifies aspects of the game because you're only thinking about these 3 mini games at a time. So you only need to know the rules to those games and how to play them, which is simple. You need wool and peak credits, and how to get them. You can get them from us, the community. So if you join the Discord server right now, even a lot of folks are spamming gifts, and actually it looks like it's mostly term, but people are spamming gifts. And what we'll do is actually send you the wool and the peak credits so that you can play today at 1 in an hour. But beyond that, like, okay, I've played my game. How do I get wool? How do I get peak credits? That part gets a little more complex. And I think that's where we're heading next in terms of delivery and product enhancements. It's how do we smooth out that on ramp to make it a little bit simpler for people to onboard to Wolf Game and enjoy these games more casually. Um, the farm itself, that aspect of the game is a whole other dimension that enriches your experience on the peak. That's where you go to breed your sheep, where you go to collect resources, which will later be used as power-ups in the games on the peak. That's the deep meta of Wolf Game, and is very much at the moment catered to Web3 natives. I guess on the whole, the entirety of Wolf Game is catered toward Web3 natives, but that on-ramp is a core piece, or a key piece rather, to I think growing the game in the future, and something that we're focused on. And right now it's more or less limited to pulling out the instruction book, sitting you down and reading it to you. But we do have these gifts, which I think are an awesome addition, to be able to actually send to new prospective players and bring them in with relatively low friction.
Just gonna hop in real quick. I know Brian probably has some awesome stuff to say, but like the onboarding question is a big question mark for a lot of projects, Wolf Game included. I mean, it's not immune to the sort of downtrend that's been happening in NFTs and the market, and enthusiasm is a bit down. But I think an interesting kind of thing that Wolf Game has a really great opportunity is, there's always talk about how are we going to onboard mainstream gamers. That's like such a huge target that everybody's is really trying to hit. It's giant industry and like billions of gamers. How do we get them into Web3? I think Wolf Game actually is now targeting a different subset of gamers, which is board gamers. I really think that there's an opportunity to onboard this also not equally, but a massive industry of board gamers. There's got to be millions of people playing board games at any given moment throughout the day and on the planet. And if they catch wind that they can hop in and play Wolfwitz or Waterwall, that strongly mimics an existing board game called Hex. If people catch wind that they can skillfully play and earn money, I think that is attractive to them. So let's onboard the board gaming audience first. I think that's a really cool thing to try.
Brian's got his hand up, but I'm going to interrupt real quick just to say that industry is a $15 billion industry.
It is indeed, but as I learned after publishing 2 physical games, the margins are pretty tight when you're printing stuff and shipping it. But if you do it on the internet, way better business. So I think you're onto something there. You look at something like Among Us, right? That's kind of a reskin or reimagination of a popular mafia style game, and that worked incredibly well, right? Because it's just bringing people together from around the world. I mean, my biggest problem with my giant wall of board games is that I don't really have people around me all the time that want to play, whereas you guys are solving that, right? Anyone who's building board games online is solving that problem. So I think it's a really smart strategy. Again, as long as you can continue to evolve its accessibility, approachability, just making it easy for people to jump in. Yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one piece of alpha for you, but very much on the near-term roadmap is one of the 3 games is called Wolfwitz. It's 8 cards. It resembles a game called Love Letter, which is a very simple strategic card game. If you've played euchre or bridge, it's kind of in that zone. Their plan is to produce physicals of those cards and those decks and go through distributors like Amazon or Target. And you can start to think of it like what Pudgy's did. It starts to become a physical to digital experience where you buy the deck of cards because you like the branding, you like the game, you play it with your friends. But all of a sudden, there's a QR code that you can scan, and it brings you to this digital experience where you can now play with friends anytime you want. Especially when you don't have people to play with. And if you want to graduate to higher stakes, you can do that too. But I think that's a really interesting onboarding pathway. If you look at games like Exploding Kittens or Unstable Unicorns, they've absolutely blown up on Amazon. They're cheap to produce, and I think the games that Wolf Game is producing, are very amenable to that flow. Term mentioned, Waterwall, the river game you mentioned, board. is very similar to Hex, if you've ever played that. I could see them skinning and revamping games like Battleship or Stratego, favorites that people know and love and that are familiar. And then I think, once you get in game, I think a lot of it has to do with, like first time user experience content. So I know, for example, the team is already producing, onboarding videos that walk you through how do you play Wolfwitz? How do you play Waterwall, with visuals, perhaps an interactive tutorial. That way, within 2 minutes, you understand the basic strategy, you understand the rules, and then hopefully you don't have to spend, 6 hours listening to somebody to learn how to play the game correctly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's one of the things that I constantly see within like trying to pick up board games or any game in general, right? Is like how complex it is and having to like figure it out in real time with people around you or like online can be difficult, right? So how can we ease that? So like what are some things that you all think are beyond like tutorial videos, right? Interaction with community. Do you see other ways to be able to, mitigate that issue as we move forward? Because I think it's really important, right? Is like educating the standard player and like having them feel comfortable while they're playing it, right?
I think you need one that initial tutorial. You need to understand the ground rules at a basic. But then I think you almost need like a training arena. It can either be, versus an easy AI, which you can increase the difficulty of. It can be versus other new players. That way you can play for free. You can play regularly. You can kind of like get your feet wet, understand the game. And then once you're comfortable, then I think you can start to graduate to more competitive play, high stakes play, leaderboards, tournaments, all of that. But, I think with any board game, the first time you play it, it's always confusing as fuck. You don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And then there's always this like, holy shit moment. It clicked and this is really fun. I think getting people to make it to that, oh shit, this is fun, I want to play more moment is really, I think, what becomes important when you think about conversion.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think one of the things we have as a benefit here in the space as digital is like training tools within games, right? So some of the best games in the world, in my opinion, Counter-Strike, being the main one, and like Rocket League's another good example too. Like all these like tools are being created. Valorant has them now as well. Like allows the person to. It's like going out and wanting to play basketball, right? And I remember at a crucial point in my life where like I couldn't get people to come hoop with me, so I'm like, I'm gonna find online like a game to play. Found Counter-Strike, and I kept on using the tool religiously for like aim practice, right? So as people play those things on a digital interface, they can get comfortable with the game, and then you can expand that to physical, get better, more competitive in the digital. Doesn't matter, but like tools to practice are so important, and we have such an opportunity to push those in front of our community members. Like, love it.
I think too with a format
Yeah, and
like the Peak, the games that we have today are short, they're snappy, and they're intuitive. Hex plays like an adult version of tic-tac-toe. Wolfwitz is a card game. There are only 8 cards in your hand. Both players have the same cards. The descriptions of what the cards do are printed on them. So you get a very quick read on what these things do and how to play them. And so the strategy is light. It's there, but it's light. And I think that that's key to this initial stage here as we launch just 3 games to make sure that they're intuitive games that you don't need to bust out the instruction manual to understand. It's that deeper game, like if you wanted to own a land plot, if you wanted to think about breeding your animals, like that's the double click where you're like, all right, I'm going to do some reading. I know when Snowfro joined us, he ended up printing out the wallpaper in full on paper, and he and his wife sat down and read it together, which I think is absolutely hilarious. And I have a picture of his wife reading it actually. I could never imagine doing that with the Peak games, and I'm grateful that those games are short and simple. And I think that if you're thinking about our particular on ramp, that's the way to do it. Certainly it can be a challenge if your game is more complex than what we've got going on the Peak.
Right. Short and simple too has been like an ongoing theme within gaming recently, right? Like we've seen like I think of games like Dota, for example, had like a very like a long time to play one game and has gone down over the years. And like we just see the attention span of the gamer being shorter and shorter, but it's like a blessing and a curse in my opinion, right? To where you want to get people in playing your game like a small instance, and then hopefully like over the course of not just one big instance, multiple small ones, they finally get comfortable within the game and learn it, and then therefore they can expand into the ecosystem. So like, yeah, you definitely see that theme overall.
Yeah, I mean it's a gift and a curse, right? Because with casual games, and you certainly see this with mobile games, the easier it is to jump in or to produce the game, the more your competition is, right? Because there's millions of other people or thousands of other people trying to build these types of games. On the other hand, like it doesn't take an hour to learn it, so it's easy to get a new player. And then you have the opposite end of games that are super complicated, whether they're video games or board games. And once somebody's in and they've invested that time to understand that complex game, it's hard to get them to switch, right? Like it's hard to get somebody who's really invested in like Cyberpunk 2077 to shift over to playing, I don't know, the new Star Wars game or something like that. So it's a tough model. What I do like about what you're doing though is you're creating all these different games that scale in complexity. So when you first join, it sounds like you can play something that feels really familiar, something that looks like a game that you've played before, and then over time, as you guys release more titles and more games, people will be able to expand what they do within the ecosystem. So yeah, I mean, definitely love that. One question I had for you guys over the last like year and a half is around like player liquidity. I find that especially with Web3 games, you have this issue where I'm playing a multiplayer game and there aren't always people around online for me to play. Are you guys not having that issue because it's typically like a one versus one versus like a one versus 99? Are there like ways to use bots? Like how are you thinking about making sure that someone's not waiting around a long time to play against somebody else?
I can hop in on and answer this one. I actually have some experience. I'm a 10-year game dev, and I worked on a game, a AAA quality game, and it had a multiplayer component that eventually died because there was not enough people queuing up. And the issue that they had in that game was that there were too many different matchmaking queues to choose between. There was many different game modes, and it fractured the player base, and they were all like 4v4 games. So there was like 10 different playlists that you could queue up, and so people basically were sitting in matchmaking queues for 20 minutes, and that it was not sustainable, and people just dismissed the whole game as dead. So that multiplayer side of it died. So what Wolf Game is doing, I think, is really smart. You kind of were on the right track about right now. They're all 1v1 games. Which definitely makes the matchmaking queues very, very snappy. And how they're handling the initial peak games is that they use these opt-in windows. So there's only a specific times of day that you can actually opt in to play. And we could see this change in the future, depending on play volume and the demands of the community. But I think the key that they're trying to hit is the idea, the feeling that the game is very active, and so far, because it's specific playing windows in the Discord, it's always just a really, really hyped up moment when everybody's queuing up for the game, all playing the same type of game, and then are able to discuss strategy and how their outcomes happened, and sharing the results of their games, and that would be lessened if you could just queue up whenever you wanted. That would distribute the playing over the course of the day, which would be less exciting, and less chance that that there's a big bombastic playtime where everybody's playing in this like arena style matchup sequence. So I think it's smart how they're handling it. And looking forward to how they might expand upon that format in the future too.
Yeah, and the other thing I really like about the approach, with play windows, and I would imagine they'll expand them as the player base grows. But if you remember the game HQ and the phenomenon that was, for a year or so, it turns, each of the games into an event. You have 10 minutes to opt in before it starts, and then the game lasts 5 to 7 minutes max. So if you're time poor, but you want something electric, it very much has that appeal, which, for me, I'm not a gamer anymore. I used to play WoW and Final Fantasy and Counter-Strike when I was younger, but, now I have 20, 30 minutes a day to play. So I think for me, I like that it's snappy. I like that I can play it with my busy schedule. And, if you want to play high stakes, you can. If you want to play for free or, for 500 wool, you can do that too, which I think is nice. It has that event approach. The other piece I wanted to mention too is, I think when you look at the broader Wolf game, Peak has those windows. The rest of Wolf game is all asynchronous. So you can set and forget your sheep to collect and gather resources and just leave them. You can put your sheep into barns and breed them and just leave them. And the big key there is, wolves can come and actually steal your NFT that's being bred if you're not careful and you don't pay attention to it. Wolves can come and attack your sheep that are gathering and steal their resources. But this is happening over the course of days and weeks. So that part of the game is very much designed to be play at your own pace, hop in when you can, but be strategic and prudent about how you protect your assets so they don't get jacked up. So I think they've been clever about how both of these sides of the game can cater towards a smaller or less active player base.
You mentioned something really interesting to me, which I find is really exciting about this space too, is like the idea of finding loops and fun things for all types of player within the same environment. Like we see this in MMOs, right? Like for sure, but also with other games, I'm seeing it more and more to where it's like not just a PvP game, it can be PvE, PvP. And like we've seen, recent like within Steam on itself, like PvP, PvE games in themselves being made, right? Like and creating those environments where the community feels strong enough to be able to have those conversations, to play within the loop that they enjoy, and not feel like it's too overwhelming to like step into like maybe they do step into the PvP, right? Or the PvP player wants to go play the cozy comfort like style of the game. Like, do you see that happening over the course of next year with a lot more games, or do you see that theme in general, or what's your thoughts on that?
Sure, hop in. I think so. I think the really cool thing about Wolf Game is that there is many different game modes already between what we call the Valley game and then the launching Peak games. And the idea is seemingly that they're trying to make something for everybody to some extent. A lot of people don't want to, like I think you were saying, a lot of people don't really want to participate too much in PvP style games. I mean, like, when I'm playing World of Warcraft or RuneScape, I usually don't participate in PvP stuff myself. I'm usually just a PvE guy. So if you don't really like that kind of stuff, then we have that whole half of the game that's really just about accumulation and economic dominance and playing the resource market, which is a really cool aspect of Valley Game that is kind of slept on. There's a 4 or 5 off-chain resources that only exist on the in the game, not on chain, but they're governed by a Uniswap style market maker system. So it's a very familiar style trading swapping aspect between the resources, and there's even trading charts, and people are using technical analysis and deciding when to buy and sell these resources, and there's even a limit trading option that's a community built tool. So there's all sorts of different. If you're in it for the economic dominance, if you want to flex your crypto trading skills, it has that all built in the game. And then this the Peak is really a platform that they're gonna probably build all sorts of different types of games. I think mostly they're gonna be PvP. I think they're likely to remain 1v1. Although actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the Peak paper does mention that in the future team style formats could come back. There was a whole alpha game that took place while the full game was built that was team style. So we could see a return of something like that. There's really just many different styles of and formats that they could explore, which is really exciting. And the cool thing though is like this is not like there are other projects that are talking about this stuff and talking and like saying it's soon. And really Wolf Game is basically there. Like the platform is built, and we're at the ground floor of this platform, not just a pie in the sky idea, not just a speculative vision. It's basically here, and so I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, the earliest mention from the shepherd to me about what was in store for the future of Wolf Game was back on November 21st of 2021. And his words were huge game coming. And I think that we're seeing that now. I think that we have arrived at that huge game. There are various deep metas depending on how you choose to enjoy Wolf Game. And not all of that is official. A lot of it has come from the community, as you said, Term. There's the limit trading through Val's extension. That's a really powerful meta on its own. But we're really at even, I said we've arrived. I said that this is the huge game, but we're also at the beginnings of that. The platform's here, and there's so much more runway for what can be delivered next. I'm certain that we will see more prominence given to the 14 Alpha 8 Wolves, similar to how we saw in Alpha Game. We mentioned Cave Game, which was a great test and learn opportunity for the team to try some new things. And during Cave Game, many of you will remember there was a team-based competitive hunt for pieces of parchment hidden throughout the cave. I can see elements of that returning to the peak, even amongst the games that we have currently. Even gamifying things like handing out referrals through peak gifts. I could see a leaderboard in which we're tracking how many gifts have been delivered by each individual that participates in it. There's a lot of ways that I see the team continuing to expand upon the concepts that we've seen in the past and are seeing right now.
I feel like this has been a really huge strength of your project since the very beginning, that you guys have always built in such a legitimately decentralized way that you just continue to open up the door to new possibilities by saying, like, yes, community members can do that based on the current system, but we're not going to close off the possibility of having additional systems open up the door for more community members to follow how they think these games can evolve. I've got just the longest list of questions for you guys, but as we're getting towards the end of the hour, I was going to invite anybody from the audience to come up and ask some questions as well. And yeah, Bri, take it.
I was going to add on to your point, Bridge, because it's a great one. One of the things that is so unique about Wolf Game is that it's not VC funded. They have no plans to do more mints in the near future. So in a lot of ways, it's very pure and very, purely Web3, no shaded VC funded companies. I work for one in Infinigods. It enables a different style of building and different expectations. But I think, with Wolf Game, it's a very lean team. They're developing at their own pace. Again, it's probably too slow for some, but I think there's something really cool about that and unique about that as an early, GameFi project that's evolved and had to pivot. So, when I look at projects and I scout new ideas, that's what I've, always been attracted to. It's, who's building something that truly is unique and done differently and not the consensus. And I think that's drawn me and so many others to the project. And, we've stayed with it, through thick and thin.
Yeah, and Terminus is a clear example of that. Just the community members that step up and just get really involved, and all of a sudden, like, they're part of the inertia of the project. I know you guys have a super busy day and week coming up. What's going on in the next half an hour, an hour? Can you guys tell us about that?
In other words, what should people be thinking about doing, or how can people participate in the coming week?
Bri, you want to do that, or I can?
I can jump in. Sorry, I was distracted for a moment. Yeah, no, we've got opt-in for Wolfwits opening in about 25 minutes on the peak. Wolfwits, for many in the audience, will be familiar, but it is a card game played with just 8 cards in each player's hand. The cards have various points, various abilities, and the object is to simply defeat your opponent and win their wool entry fee to the peak. Anyone can play. People in the community are loaded down with gifts that serve as a referral mechanism. So if anyone in the audience is not presently a Wolf gamer, jump in the Discord, share your wallet, and someone can send you a peak gift, which includes the wool and peak credits that you need to play Wolfwits. I think we can probably pin up some videos so people can see what that looks like. Bry's got a good one. Let me see if I can find that in this Twitter feed here. Wolfwits is my personal favorite. I think I said that earlier in the episode. And so I'm really looking forward to playing it again today. I think we've only played Wolfwits 3 times so far through this beta matchmaking period. I know that the beta is quite close to wrapping. There were just some final bug fixes before we open up the higher stakes tables, if you will, to participate in these games. And like the team would not encourage me to say this, but Wolfwitz is our most analogous to a casino card game. We mentioned blackjack and poker and how those are played, and Wolfwitz feels in a similar vein. So when you think about a head-to-head card game in which you're wagering a prize, this one I think is going to pique some interest in that casino gambling audience as we think about how we expand the game. So I'm pretty stoked on it.
Wolfwitz is fun as fuck.
That's
I think
awesome.
it's so exhilarating. There's this one card called the Shocker. It's number 2, and you win by placing the highest number card. But the interesting thing is, if the opponent plays the 8, the Alpha 8 card, which is like your trump card, it beats everything. You automatically win the game. It's like there's a piece in Stratego that does that too. So it's really interesting. Both players have the same set of 8 cards. There's no randomization, with respect to what you get. And it's all about outwitting and outplaying your opponent. What sequence and combination of cards do you play to score the most points? So I think it's a lot of fun. It's easy to learn. If you want to play, please jump in the Wolf Game Discord. We'll hit you up with a free game or multiple, and we'll see you up there.
I just linked a video of my game session that was previously played. But like, yeah, just real quick about Wolfwitz, man, what a awesome game. It's super balanced. We even run some like simulation matches in the Discord. Like people are just trying to practice and discover new interesting combos, different openers, different end game strategies, and it's just been really fun. After many months of just kind of like back on the waiting and the speculating. Finally being able to discuss strategy again is really, really refreshing. The Discord is almost always active, and especially during those opt-in and playing windows, like I was saying. So it's really, really, really fun too. And I've been doing some streaming as well on Twitch. I don't think I'm gonna have time to do it today, but check out my feed, and whenever there's opt-ins, I'll most likely being able to Twitch stream it. So if you're not able to participate, at least you can watch and have fun as I'm having fun.
Yeah, the games are really cool with a built-in social sharing feature. I know many again in the audience are familiar with this, but you can screen record your game as you play, and that's baked into the experience. There's a little record button that you can click.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that's a really important concept when it comes to marketing the product, right? Like how do you get this in front of people? And the best way to do it is from your community. And Wolfgame has a phenomenal community, a exceptional group of promoters, really, of the product. And I think that's obviously a testament to what the Shepherd has built. But we've got a great group of people, and they're really fun to talk with. I would encourage anyone to swing by the Discord and spend some time there.
I was wondering, for Wolf Game, is there any opportunities to be paid to promote or to play the game and promote it, as I said? Are there any opportunities like that?
You're saying so, like to come on board as a content creator for the team?
Yeah, like a content creator, someone who plays the game and promotes it online.
Yeah,
And,
I think this notion of like content bounties is really interesting. It's something that Infinigods does really well. In fact, there's a content bounty running right now for people that play our tower defense game, Immortal Siege. That's not something that we've explored with Wolfgame. I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility, though. I think what's most important for Wolfgame at the moment is making sure that these games are stable. We don't even have the higher stakes tables open yet, and so we need to get there first and foremost. Possibly when things are running, you might see that strategy adopted, but I can't speak to the future plans in that respect.
As far as direct lines for promotion,
Okay.
it's hard to say for like individual teams, but generally the track is similar to what you guys are saying. Is like you just record your screen, you start promoting it, and then if you can prove that you're engaging and you're engaging with the game in an interesting way, then a lot of times that happens organically. Terminus, once again, like it's the community members that get engaged and start like really using the games for the way that they were designed, like can show that you know, they are kind of setting the standard for people. So, you know, I think Yeah, is that kind of what you guys were thinking with the screen capture system and just having organic movements stem off from just engaging with the product over time?
Yeah, that's always going to be your most
Yeah,
authentic form of engagement.
Yeah, authenticity, hardcore.
Yeah, I love the fact that you guys are keeping the stakes low while you're doing some, let's just call it live testing. When you look at other like TCGs, there's a lot of buffing and nerfing that has to happen as people find weird exploits for particular cards. And so I'm definitely excited. I also love that everyone plays with the same set of cards. That was part of the reason I always got annoyed by like Magic and those types of games. It's like somebody could just have something better in their deck, and it doesn't feel like a fair fight. So really good strategic decisions. This has been awesome. I mean, I personally learned so much. As I said to you guys in the private messages on the back channel, like I'm a little late to Wolf Game, and this has been really helpful for me. So I'm excited to dive in, especially as you have a card game, releasing. Any final thoughts, call outs from you guys before we wrap things up?
No, just thank you, Board. Thank you, Bear. Thank you, Bridge and Jit. You guys have been consummate hosts. Thank you for having us. We're nerds. We love talking about Wolf Game to new people. I think it's like explaining board games to your best friends. So it's always fun when we have a platform to do that. If anybody wants a free game ever to peek to try it out, if ever anybody has questions about Wolf Game strategy, assets, please, my DMs are open. But we have a game starting at 1 p.m. If you want to try it out today, just hop in the Wolf Game Discord and we'll get you hooked up. But thank you again, guys.
Amazing. Yeah. And thank you guys for taking the time to do this space on such a busy day, not only launching a game, but also filling your cart on Amazon with things you want to buy. You guys took an hour of your time to bring new people into the ecosystem and help them on board. So really appreciate the awesome conversation. To everyone who's listening, thank you guys for joining. Bear and I have been having a really fun time with Game Changers. Want to keep this thing going, talking to lots of industry smart people, nerds, and thanks as always for all the questions that were sent in advance and for tuning in. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Hi guys, thanks for having us.
Awesome.